All right, a lot of athletes say they want to be leaders, but leadership doesn't grow on trees. It comes in how you prepare, how you bounce back from mistakes, how you carry yourself when nobody's watching. Today's guest, Greg Holcomb, owner of Next Level Athletix, has worked with some of the biggest names in football at the quarterback position, including JJ McCarthy. But what makes Greg different is that he doesn't just train quarterbacks, he builds CEOs. His athletes don't just learn how to throw a ball. He doesn't just teach the techniques. He actually helps them learn how to lead in life. So whether you're a quarterback or not, what we are talking about applies to every single one of you out there, especially if you want to raise your standard, your team standard, and lead by example. So, Greg, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Nick. I'm really excited. I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, of course. I mean, like I said, this is something that is huge for quarterbacks, but this is huge for anybody. And so what I want to start with is, you this quarterback CEO, you compare quarterbacks to CEOs. Can you
Right.
unpack that a little bit more?
Yeah, I mean, I listen, I say this all the time. Do you want to work for somebody or do you want to own the company? And it's like, I mean, that's applicable to anybody, whether you're playing quarterback or not even football at all. And there are people I think that do want to just work for somebody. They're okay in that role. They don't mind being an employee and being paid and just doing a job and all that good stuff. And then the quarterback position, I think, is more of a CEO level type of position in sports. It's the guy who makes the decisions. It's the guy who has the ball in his hands. It's the guy that impacts the play of the game the most, just like a CEO in a company. And there's so many leadership qualities that go into both. But like we talked about, that isn't always applicable to quarterbacks. So yeah, it's trying to mold young men and now women too. Girls are getting into flag football, which is becoming huge, into better people. For I don't know the percentage, I'll say 99.9% of them, football is going to be over someday.
Yeah.
And what you learn playing this awesome sport can carry you into other aspects of your life. I have guys that were really successful high school quarterbacks, and they simply just didn't want to go and play college football. They just wanted to go on to college and be just a regular college student. Max Hauser is a great example. He was a really good quarterback at Wheaton North, and he didn't want to go play college football. And he went to the University of Iowa, and he's going to be a very successful young man doing some line of work in whatever he ends up doing. But I guarantee you that a lot of what he learned playing quarterback and training with us and all of those things are going to help him just become a better young man.
Well, and I love that. Again, you have this wide spectrum of where athletes are falling, but they're always falling in a place where they, like you said, they're heading into more leadership, or they're heading more into they're going to be successful regardless of where they go. Because you have the heights of JJ McCarthy and some other Power 5 pro quarterbacks, but then you have other guys like Max, where it's they're heading into new opportunities that are just as impactful.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
So
mean, you have the J.J. McCarthys who are going to, be the 10th pick in the NFL draft and start for the Minnesota Vikings and all that stuff. And then you have the guy that just wants to be a really good version of himself playing high school football and may or may not go on to college. And, if he does, he's playing at a small D3 school like I played at, but he's also enjoying his opportunity because, he maximized his training and did all the things that he needed to. And he's playing D3 football, has no chance of playing in the NFL, but then also will leave college and start his life in whatever career he has and probably take some of those things that he learned playing football, possibly playing quarterback, and applying those to being a better employee, becoming a better father, just being a better person in general.
yeah, that's huge. And so I want to ask this question related to this, as we're talking about leadership and stuff that can be very probably controversial, depending on how it's answered and stuff. But I think regardless, it's a very important question to ask, especially from somebody who trains leaders for a living.
Mm-hmm.
Is leadership born or is it made?
I think it's part of your DNA. I think it's part of your fabric. It's just something that I think you're born with it. It's just some guys are just made a certain way that they are natural leaders. I also think that it can be something that can be taught. So you can teach leadership skills to somebody, and they may not be the most natural leader. Like I can teach a kid how to throw a football. He might not be the most natural thrower. And then I have kids who walk in and it's like, they pick up a ball, they throw it, and it's like, wow, that's like different, right? And you notice both of those. And so I get those two levels of quarterbacks, and I also get those two levels of leaders. There are kids who train with us that are quiet leaders. They don't say much, but they lead like they're a walking example of leadership. They do all the right things. They, get good grades. They just, they're just made in a certain way to do the right thing, but maybe not their leadership skills come out verbally. But yeah, I think that you can be taught to be a leader regardless. But I do think that there are kids that are just more kind of born into that also. There's just like something about them. And those kids are just different. You see, like, I'll look at a guy like Tom Brady. Like, there's no way that he was taught to be a leader. He was born that way, and I'm sure it was taught a lot of different skills to be a better version of a leader as he got older. But I think that that's like something that's inherent. It's part of your DNA.
Well, it's like anything. You have that development of it. Like you can throw a ball 50 yards, but you still gotta develop. How you do that accurate, all the other pieces of it.
Yeah, for sure.
So again, one of the things I really love about you that stuck out to me, especially as check out your site and everything, is again, it's not just about the skills training, it's about this type of training. There's a lot of quarterback coaches in my area. There's a lot of obviously quarterbacks in general in my area, and some of the quarterbacks I've talked to online, they talk about having that trouble with leadership. They struggle with leading their team because they're more of a silent type of person, or maybe they weren't born more of that leadership. Like, what would your advice be for those kind of people who maybe struggle with that?
Yeah, I think first you have to be comfortable in your own skin, right? Like you have to have a confidence and be happy with who you are. And I think there's probably a lot of kids in this generation for sure, especially with mental health, that just aren't. They might show it on the outside and everything looks great, but inherently there might not be something, clicking for them. Maybe they just, I don't know. They walk the halls and everybody thinks that everything's great at home, all that stuff. But really inside, there's a kid that might be struggling. So I think first and foremost, you have to be comfortable in your own skin and just be, confident in who you are. And then I think there's a lot of different types of leaders. The ones that are very vocal and like brash and rah rah and like those guys, sometimes those aren't always the best leaders. Like that can be a facade too. You can't be, I always talk about this with my son. Like your biggest apology is change in behavior, right? So if you're sorry for doing something, but you keep doing the same thing over and over and over again, that's the same bad behavior and I'm not accepting your apology. And I think one of the things with, becoming a leader is not just talking the talk, but walk the walk, right? You're a walking example of leadership. You just do all the right things. So, if you struggle with leadership, you might think that you're struggling with leadership, but really people see you as a leader simply because of the things that you're doing that you might not even know that they know. So I would say that anybody who thinks that they're maybe struggling leading their team, I don't know, perception isn't always reality. So they could be, and they have no idea how much they're impacting somebody.
Yeah. I think I really like that because, I mean, like you said, the lead by example, and there's a lot of quotes on this of like, it's even like when they talk about like preaching the gospel, it's like preach the gospel, but do it essentially like doing it through your actions, not your words, essentially. And there's a lot of like different analogies of like walk the walk, don't just talk the talk type of thing.
Exactly.
And yeah.
The quarterback position, like, I always tell kids this as well. If you're going to walk out in front of 2,000 people on a Friday night, in front of your entire school, in front of a whole bunch of parents, in front of alumni, in front of people in the community, and you think that you're going to be the man, right? And you're going to be like the guy on the field and doing all these great things. But then how you behave and how you act outside of that environment. So if you're a jerk in the cafeteria, making fun of kids, I mean, let's be honest, there are still cliques these days, right? There's the kids who like maybe just don't fit in. So if you're like being a bully, like doing any of that stuff, you are not like, that's like a Jekyll and Hyde type of thing. You cannot be a true leader if that's who you're going to be. So I would say that I always tell the kids that I train, if you're going to be a jackass in the hallways, in the social environment, wherever you're at, and then think that you're going to be the man on Friday nights in front of all those people, that's not going to match up. You're leading a double life, and that's will be exposed.
Yeah, I mean that's I mean there's the term two faced, but it's also the fact that you can't you can't have two basically identities. Like you're trying to have these two different identities of one being this leader and face and confident whatever, and then you have this other identity that's like, yeah, you're a jerk to people. Like they can't, eventually one's going to impact the other, one's going to overtake the other. So
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, I just was talking to somebody and they said something about, so we were talking about this very high level freshman who's starting to get offers and all that stuff. I don't know him personally at all. And the person I was talking to knew a little bit about him and said to me, "Oh, yeah, he's kind of a little bit of a kid, like he gets into trouble and all that stuff." And I was like, "Really? I had no idea." Right. And so it'll be interesting to see like you see this one person who's getting scholarship offers and very talented and looks like the man and all this stuff, and then I found out from somebody who has a personal connection to him through his little brother or something that he gets in a little bit of trouble. And it's like I wouldn't want somebody to be able to even say that about me if I was that kid, right? I would never want those things to be said. I would always want my like the perception of me to be, oh, he takes care of it in the classroom. He's a good person. He's a leader. He's kind. He's, nice. Like, and then he's a badass. He can throw the football better than anybody else or whatever that is. So all that stuff, I think the elite guys who end up becoming elite don't have that double life. They're true to themselves and who they are.
That's good. There's a lot of different ways we could take that I even had like some other ideas that that I think about, but this goes back to that leading by example. And so when we talk about this, whether it be the double life or whether it just be making mistakes, you're really big on accountability. What do athletes, and maybe even specifically quarterbacks, what do they need to do to own up? Like what's the best way for them to be better with accountability, essentially, if they struggle with that?
Yeah, I think it goes back to what I kind of talked about a little bit earlier. Like the ultimate apology or whatever is change behavior, right? So for me to be accountable and own up to a mistake I've made or something that I've done, like, I don't know, I have a soft spot for people that, get in trouble and then come back from it. And they actually look like they're genuine in what they're doing, right? Like when I bring up the name Michael Vick to a lot of people, you would think like, oh my God, like amazing quarterback, phenomenal, and other people might go, obviously went to prison for dog fighting and all that stuff. And I don't know, I have a soft spot for people like a Michael Vick who come back from something like that. Maybe I'm naive, but the perception that I get is that he's a changed person, right? That he realizes his mistakes when he was younger and, came back from it, matured from it, wouldn't make those same mistakes again. So, whether you're a quarterback or not, I think, anything that you do that would be frowned upon or get in trouble or whatever, if you can change your behavior and be consistent in that, that's the ultimate apology and it's the ultimate like way to bounce back from that. So, I mean, I'm 56 years old almost. I've made a ton of mistakes in my life, right? And so for me, it's, let's not make the same mistake over and over and over again. When I train my quarterbacks, I tell them, if I'm teaching you something and we have to continue over and over and over again to go over this and you're not improving it or changing it, I don't know if we're going to get anywhere, right? There's no progress made from that. So I sell my sessions in packages of 5 or 10. And if the kid that I'm training is the same kid that walked in the door on session 10 that he was on session 1, he might not be the quarterback. That might not be his ultimate position. So I have to have a hard conversation to be able to say, like, I don't know if this is for you. You might be a better receiver. You might be a better something else. So same thing with just in life, Rand. Like it's, you know, you can maybe not be the best version of yourself in a moment, but don't let that be consistent throughout, that defines who you are then.
Yeah, yeah. So we talk a lot about our mistakes. What about when it's not your fault?
As a quarterback, it's always your fault. I was a freshman in high school, and my center, I was under center, and my center snapped me a bad snap under center. It like hit me in the hand bad, and it was a fumble. The other team recovered. And as we're coming off the field, and it was at a critical time of the game, like really bad time for a fumble. And as we're coming off the field, I started to snap at him. His name was Doug Bremer. He's one of my best friends, actually. And I'm yelling at him because he snapped the ball to me bad, and he's yelling back at me. And my coach grabbed me by the face mask. This is back when you could like throw kids around a little bit. And he pulled me aside and he said, I don't give a crap what happened out there. Like, it's your fault. If that snap didn't hit you in the hands, I don't care if it did or didn't. And I learned right there. And I was, 15 years old as a freshman, 14. I'm almost 56 now. I remember that like it was yesterday. And it taught me, like, no matter what happens, it's my fault. No matter what happens, it's my fault. And I've actually used that story with some other kids that I've seen. I stand on a lot of sidelines and go to a lot of high school football games and watch the kids that, we train play. And, if a quarterback threw an interception and it was the fault of the receiver, technically, because he ran the wrong route, like no matter what, when you're coming off the field, you let that receiver know, hey, that's my bad. And he's like, no, I ran the wrong route. No, dude, that's my bad. I got it, right? And if you do that, every single guy on that sidelines, every coach that's coaching you would die for you, right? Like those guys would go to bat for you. And if you're that kind of a person, you will be the ultimate leader. Like guys would kill for you.
That's good. I like that. And that's a leader in general. Anytime I think about taking accountability for something that maybe wasn't your fault, I think about, I'm sure the Seahawks versus the Patriots in the Super
Yeah.
Bowl.
Yep, for sure. Yeah, bad play call, bad throw, like everything, right? But like you don't throw people under the bus. You just don't do that. You take accountability, and it's like if you do that, I think, people would see you as like, wow, man, like I would play for that guy, or I would love to have that guy on my team, or I would love to work for that person, or I would rather like to employ that person, right? And that's like outside of football stuff, you
Yeah.
know?
Well, and something that you just mentioned too, you were talking about, those coaches or those players that will fight for you, who will basically run through a wall for you. What does it look like as a leader to have a team that will play for you or play with you? If you're the teammate versus being somebody who they're going to run through a wall for.
Yeah, can you say that again? I'm trying to like wrap my head
Yeah.
around.
So basically, one example is like you take that ownership of your mistakes or of even others' mistakes. But basically, what does it look like to be a leader where people will play for you and be on your side versus somebody who's actually willing to run through a wall for you or like really like fight for you as a leader?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've had coaches that I'd liked playing for, I loved playing for, and then I've had guys like that I would like, die for. Right. And it's like there's just something about that person that is special, and they just bring out the best in you or whatever that is. So, yeah, there's certainly a special quality to certain people that make you want to be that. And so, yeah, I don't know. I think that goes to the leadership, the DNA of being a leader.
One, and the actions, like I think, yeah, like you say, like the actions or your actions and how you take ownership, I think is huge. What about when we talk about kind of shifting here more to that in-game pressure? Because I know regardless of your sport and regardless of your position, there is a lot of that real in-game pressure. How do you
Mm-hmm.
train your quarterbacks to think and react under that real game pressure?
Well, one of the things that we do is how we train. I mean, I think the way that we train our quarterbacks is a little bit different than some of the other guys, especially locally.
Mm.
Like we try to always create pressure situations in our training. And so I don't want to have a bunch of guys that can just literally just stand back in the pocket and, throw a football without any pressure around them. So for me, it's creating these chaotic situations. And when you do that, I feel like that shows up on the field and in pressure situations. So this is what I tell our guys. If we train hard, if we train with pressure, if we train in this chaotic environment, and can you see who that is, buddy? Here. Sorry, man. I don't know who's at my door. If we train in this pressure situation and then pressure shows up in a game, we are totally okay with it, right? If we train easy and pressure shows up, then we obviously can't, we aren't going to survive as much. Can you hang on a second? Okay. He's got to hold on. He was supposed to be here at 9 o'clock. I'm on the podcast. Hold on, man.
It's all good.
Thanks, buddy. Sorry.
Yeah, it's all
We're
good.
gonna
I
get
can
that
spice that
out.
out too.
Okay. So let me say that again. So yeah, one of the things that I think that we do is we train to play in a chaotic environment. And so if you're training in a chaotic environment, when it shows up in an actual competitive environment, you'll be used to it, right? You'll be comfortable with it. I don't love the term muscle memory because, it's like, your muscles don't have a memory, but I understand the concept behind it, right? It's creating a habit. And so if we train in a chaotic environment, and for us, it's literally like when our guys drop back, I have other quarterbacks that are like running at them, like almost in like a scramble situation so that they've got to be in a chaotic environment. And if that shows up in a competitive environment in practice or in a game, you're comfortable with it. You're used to it. If you don't train that way and it shows up, you're probably going to panic and the result's not going to obviously be good.
Mm.
So I think that's anything though in life. Like if you would take that approach to your job, like, I don't know, like whatever you would be doing, and you train yourself to be able to operate in stressful situations. I love praying and meditating. I'm a faith-based person for the most part. And so I was always taught that praying is talking to God and meditating is listening. So if I'm sitting there just in this quiet moment and can just process myself and listen to my breathing, and just, listen to some sounds or some things like that, it can put you into an environment that you can operate in a chaotic environment. So I don't know. One of the things that I really admire about JJ is the fact that he's into a lot of just all of that mental and thinking and all of that stuff. So I think that has helped him probably more than anything. There was a lot of famous pictures of him like pregame
Yep.
sitting at the base of the goalpost and all that stuff. But what people don't know is when he's at Michigan, he would drive in his truck and go out into the woods and lay down a blanket and just like, just sit in the woods and meditate and whatever. And you've got like, he's not a normal college kid, but most college kids are on Friday nights going out to bars and frat parties and all that. And that's like the guy that he is. And again, I think that's just part of your DNA. That's somebody who you are.
Yeah. It's funny because anytime I do think about meditation as an athlete, yeah, he's the first person I think about, and I work with all sports. Like it's like you just know, but it's the pictures, it's all the things, it's visible. But I think that's so powerful, and so there's the preparation side of it, and I think that this next piece also ties to preparation. But what about when you do make the mistakes, when the things do happen under pressure? Like, you talk about resilience, you talk about pace, and so like how can, first of all, if you explain pace, and then like how can athletes use that in these situations where they make mistakes?
Yeah, I think in pressure situations, that's the easiest to make a mistake. I can there's a great book called Crucial Confrontations, and it's about like how you can easily get into like a verbal argument with somebody, and all of a sudden just things start to come out of your mouth that are just like damaging, right? Or inappropriate, and they end up being detrimental to the relationship or whatever. And you've got to train yourself to control your emotions and just control all that stuff. So if you're in a pressure situation and you're obviously, susceptible to making mistakes, it's acceptable to do that. But again, I think it goes back to, let's not make the same mistake over and over again. I threw 4 interceptions in the first half of a football game as a sophomore in high school. And I'm sitting there in the locker room going, okay, I'm on pace to throw 8 interceptions for the game. If I just threw 4 in the first 2 quarters, probably going to throw 4 more in the third and fourth, right? And you can easily start to think that. Or you can bring yourself out of it. You can say, I cannot let this go down this way. I can't keep making these mistakes. My teammates are looking at me like, who am I? I'm not the same person. Like, what's going on? Right. And it's like, you can get all the pats on the back. Hey, man, don't worry about it and whatever. But deep down, they're like, dude, what are you doing? And so I think that's applicable toward anything, whether it's sports or not, right? If I make the same mistake over and over and over in a job, I'm probably not working there anymore, right? Or I'm certainly not advancing. And so, I think it's, we're in this culture where we're so critical of other people and of ourselves, right? And I think especially young kids, they need to give themselves a break. Allow yourself to make some mistakes. It's okay. But don't keep making the same mistake over and over again. I mean, I'm a father to a 14 and a 12-year-old. And my message to them all the time is like, listen, you can mess up and you can you can make some mistakes. I made some myself, plenty of them. But the true person is the one who doesn't continue to make that same mistake, right? And you can be under pressure from being around friends that are going to influence you, right? And it's like, I had to have this talk with my son. Like it takes a lot of courage, but just walk away from a situation, right? Just say, hey, I'm not going to be part of this, right? If you guys want to do this, go ahead. I'm going to walk away and go do something else. I'm not going to not be your friend, but I'm certainly not going to be part of this,
Yeah.
right? And so that's hard, and there's a lot of courage that comes with that. So I think I'm like digressing from your question. I think under pressure and making mistakes it's okay to do that. First of all, let's make the mistakes not monumental so that they are, devastating. And if we're going to make small mistakes, let's not keep making the same ones over and over.
One thing that I it kind of stuck out to me as you were talking, you made that comment of like your teammates are looking at you like, who are you? Because this is not the person that we know. And so like how do you internally in those moments separate yourself from that mistake and like make it and realize that it's not who you are essentially?
That's hard. I think that's really hard because you yourself almost don't know. Like, you guys are looking at me like, who am I? I honestly don't know who I am right now either. Right? Like, I can be in an argument with somebody, like a loved one that I care about. And it's like you're almost like starting to defend your actions and say things and whatever. And it's like in the back of your mind, you're like, who am I, right? Like, I'm not the best version of myself right now. And if you can recognize that, I think you can pull yourself out of it. But that's all. I think there's training that comes from that, right? Like, you have to train yourself to be able to do that and not to be so reactive and so volatile. And so, you know, the example I gave you about throwing those 4 interceptions, like, I was just like, man, I don't know what's going on. I think a good example is Sam Darnold was with the Jets, I believe. Maybe it was Carolina. And they interviewed him after a game, and he said something about, like, I felt like there was, I can't remember what he said, but like I was seeing ghosts and there was like 10 defenders. Like, he said something that you were like, I can't believe as an NFL quarterback you're saying that. But he was being vulnerable, saying like, I just was like completely out of it because he threw a bunch of interceptions and made a bunch of bad mistakes. And, I mean, again, he's a guy that I really like. I love Sam Darnold. I think, he's bounced back his career and done a great job of it. But, people were kind of writing him off. But anyway, so my point is this, like, it's going to take some internal strength to be able to recognize what's happening or that I'm not the person that I am. And I need to take a step back. Maybe it's take a deep breath. Maybe it's just walk away from the situation, right? Like, I don't know, if you were throwing a whole bunch of interceptions, I certainly wouldn't want to not go back in, but it's almost like hey, while the defense is out there, I'm going to have to gather myself. I'm going to have to go do something different than what's going on.
Yeah. Yeah. One, I think it's important to know, like you talk about, really just with how you train, is you have to practice those situations before they happen, and put yourself into those shoes, so that, I mean, you said you don't like the muscle memory, but like even just the mental practice that
Yeah.
comes from that, so that, yeah, you just, the more that you can, because I feel this way, like I go through these situations where I make a mistake, and a lot of times I'll beat myself up for it, but I'm recognizing that more and more in the moment, and I'm catching myself and be like, no, 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 I got to redirect. So part of it's when you make more mistakes, you can kind of you got to
Yeah.
redirect it, but yeah.
I have a thing that I have always done, and I was preaching this to our youth football team last year. And when I would go to sleep the night before a game, I would literally like play the game in my head. Like I would imagine myself running through the offense, the plays that we had, and I'm playing them in my head. Like I'm literally playing the game mentally. And so I found that when I got and actually physically played the game, there was a connection to that. So I told our kids last year, our games would be on Saturdays or Sundays. And our last practice, I was like, when you guys go to bed tonight, like get off your video games, stop doing like social media and all that, and just lay in your bed and look up at the ceiling and imagine yourself, if you're a linebacker, imagine yourself playing linebacker and filling the gap and just like crushing the running back as he comes through the hole, or getting out on the edge and tackling the guy in the backfield, or covering a receiver out of the back of out of running back out of the back. Like imagine yourself playing the game.
Mhm.
And I truly think that if you mentally do that, when it physically happens, there's some connection to that. So I think you could do that, like if you're working in a work environment, right? And I've got to give a presentation in front of a bunch of people. Obviously you want to practice, so you don't want to just walk in there and just wing it. And it's the same thing with playing sports or doing anything.
Yeah, no, it's so huge. I mean, visualization. I mean, I've had a lot of mental performance guys on the and gals on the podcast, and that is like, the visualization is one of those big pieces they stress on for sure.
Yeah.
As a final message to the athletes, so this will apply. This is to your quarterbacks, but this is to anybody. But what's one message that you hope every athlete you train walks away with, no matter what their level?
It's just about being the best version of yourself. I love the saying, comparison is the thief of joy. And if you compare yourself, and we live in an environment where that's what people do, right? I mean, you get on social media and this person's wearing nicer clothes than me. This person's driving a nicer car than me. This person's like, I mean, it's like comparisons all over the place. And you can easily start to feel less than, or like, like I am not as valuable or any of that stuff. And so I try to tell our kids, like, this isn't about, like, when we have camps, I don't give away awards. I don't give away MVP awards. I don't give top camper awards. I never give any awards at any of our camps, because I don't want to single out one kid or two kids or three kids and have like 25 leave and not feel like they had value. And so I've just always been a no awards kind of person, because I want everyone to leave there. And I tell them this: be the best version of yourself at the end of this camp. Hopefully, over these 2 or 3 days that you've been here, or the training sessions, or whatever we're doing, you're getting something out of every single thing. And if you're stacking those on top of each other, you're becoming a better version of yourself. You're not going to be the next JJ McCarthy, just be the next whoever you are. And so, stop comparing yourself to the guy next to you. If he throws a great ball, you should look at that and go, wow, that's a hell of a rep, and I need to either throw something close to that or pretty close to it. And if you don't, that's okay. That guy might be an elite talented guy, and you're sitting there comparing yourself to him. So now your whole day is going to be shot. And so I try to tell our kids, like, just worry about yourself. Just be the best version of yourself. Don't compare yourself to someone else, and you'll just be happier.
Yeah. I love that. I that comparison piece, like you said, it's such a big thing in our culture, and I think it even goes into and an analogy you use for coaches, but I think this applies. You talk about pizza, and it's like if you're a Hawaiian pizza, like don't try to be the pepperoni pizza, like just
Right.
be you.
Yeah, 100%. If you're a Hawaiian pizza guy, if you like pineapple and all that, I do actually. Great, right? Yeah, I love that analogy.
Yeah. Any last things you want to leave the audience with before we wrap up?
Just not really. It was, it's just, I think sports is such a great mirror of work and life. I think football and I played basketball and played quarterback, and I've been in the corporate world. I've been, a father and a husband and all those things. And I just think that sports in general can help you be better versions of all of those things. And it's just such a great, it's just such a great launching pad into becoming a good human being. And, honestly, if you don't play sports and you find something else that's the thing that helps to make you a better version of yourself, I think it's important to always work on yourself. John Wooden had a great quote, and it was, I learned more after I knew it all, right? Like, I learned more after, and what that means is, like, I thought I knew everything, and then every day I learned something else after that. And so it's like you can always continue to work on yourself. You can always continue to be just a better version of yourself. If you're a husband, be a better husband. If you're a father, be a better father. If you're a student, be a better student. If you're an athlete, if you're a son or a daughter, whatever that is. And so, yeah, I think it's important to continue to not feel like you're a finished product ever.
That right there, that message right there, that's a really good way to finish this up, and I really appreciate you hopping on. Like there's a lot of it, again, the comparison, the being the best version of who you are, like all of these things are things that every athlete needs to hear and really let sit with them. So yeah, thank you for hopping on today.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity, Nick. It was awesome.
Of course. What is so a lot of what you do, like yes, quarterback training is a little bit easier in person, but a lot of again what we talked about today is things that they can do online with you. What we'll drop all your details in the show notes, but what would be the best way for athletes to reach out to you?
Yeah, my Instagram is probably the best way. I probably get 2 or 3 videos a week of kids that are live in the middle of nowhere, Idaho, or wherever, right? Like there aren't quarterback trainers in their geographic area of where they live. And so they'll send me, like, they'll set up their iPhone or whatever and like film themselves throwing and just, send it to me and say, hey, what do you think? Or send me game clips of them playing in actual games of things like that. And I love that because, it's obviously somebody who either doesn't have the financial means to be privately trained, doesn't have a trainer in their area that they can rely on. And so I think it's important for guys who do what I do to just be able to give little nuggets of information and help kids out. So when kids send me things, like I don't have an online training portal or anything like that. I've been told I should do some virtual training. I think that'd be, obviously a great revenue stream and just another way to get training to kids who can't do it physically. But if somebody sends me their videos through my DM, through my Next Level Instagram account, I always open it up and I always look at it. And sometimes I'll give a very detailed reply, and other times it'll just be a couple of comments, but I do try to do that.
Awesome. Yeah. So athletes, like check the show notes for that. You got the link there. But yeah, and again, thank you again for hopping on. And then for listeners, again, like sit with this more, sit with this as a, whether you're a leader as a quarterback or a leader in any other form, sit with these things and actually practice them.
Yes.
Don't just expect them to show up at game time.
No, won't work. That doesn't work.
Exactly. So yeah, listeners, as we wrap up, as always, keep striving for greatness.